What's going on, everybody? Here we are for another episode of Bleav in Kentucky. Look, everybody watching, we are live. You know our names if you listen, but now you can see our names. We got this cool new layout. We got Aaron Gershon for the Cash Paws, the former UK QB, Jalen Whitlow. My name is Vinny Hardy. Fellas, how y'all doing?
Good, man. Can't complain.
Yeah, absolutely can't complain. It's good having football back to talk about, going to practice, 3 days a week, and it's fun. It means we're getting really close to real stuff. So just about 3 weeks out. So it's a good time of year.
Coach Whitlow coming in full Walker gear. But it's about that time, baby. So
Yeah, man. We in the middle of it now, man. Camp is done, and we're doing the scrimmages, and school started today. So getting ready for first game next week, man. So we're in ground mode, man, trying to get these young men ready to play a game.
there you go. There you go. Well, we are live streaming this episode like we have been the past month or so. So if you follow us on Twitter at Bleav in Kentucky, we are live there. We got the YouTube page, Bleav in Kentucky Podcast, Facebook, Bleav in KY. So if y'all got questions or comments, throw some at us and we'll respond and read them and acknowledge them, all that good stuff. Aaron Gershon at the Cat's Paws has been at the fan day, been at media day, been at all the press conferences. We've been watching the interviews and stuff from afar, Dylan and myself. So, fellas, how we feeling? What we thinking? And as far as what we've been hearing initially in the fall camp.
Yeah, the number one thing for me was, what's on everyone's mind is the offensive line. It looked a lot better than we saw in the spring and definitely last year. I think that was the number one thing that was most encouraging from fan day practice. They were able to run outside zone successfully with really every running back that they used with that. They were able to run the ball a little bit up the middle. Pass protection was good. There was just it felt like Kentucky football again, where they're able to control the line of scrimmage on the offensive side. And that's not to say Deion Walker and Keyshawn Silver and some of those big guys didn't wreak havoc on a few plays. They sure did. It wasn't perfect. For example, the first play of 11 on 11s, Jagger Burton messed up a snap and Devin Leary had to fall on it. And it was like, here we go. But then it really just got better and better as the practice went on. So a big kudos to the offensive line. I did find it interesting that as of now, at least Jeremy Flax was getting almost all, not quite all, but most of all, the first team reps at right tackle. So we'll see if Cortland Ford eventually kind of passes him up there. But early on, I talked to Ford last Friday. I really enjoyed meeting him for the first time, and he was a pretty funny guy. But Flax as of now, got the majority of the first team reps, and that was kind of a trend with some of the transfers outside of like the obvious Devin Leary's, Deme Sumakaram Jabe, some of the guys who you just know are going to fill a role, Marcus Cox, like the guys who are given to have a role in the team. But like guys like Davian Rayner, the linebacker from Northern Illinois, was working with the third team. So it's kind of like trying to get those guys to earn their stripes a little bit. So we'll see if, Ford working with the twos is more so one of those things, or maybe Jeremy Flax is showing some improvement. So the offensive line was the first thing. And before I ramble on too much, the second thing I want to note for staying on the offensive side of the ball, Isaiah Cummings looked the best I've ever seen him personally in practice Saturday, and that's kind of been the word on the street. Before we even got to go to practice, he's back with Liam Cohen. He looks comfortable. He looks bigger, stronger, more muscular, all the above. Made a bunch of plays with the first team, second team offense, a bunch that would have went for touchdowns in games. Just was a beast out there. And so was Anthony Brown, the freshman, just continues to impress. Heard a lot of good things in the spring, but then, learned when I was doing working on a story on him that he was having some drop issues. And what Vince Marrow told me, he's pretty good friends with Maurice, who's his coach down there, his high school coach, who's a former Kentucky player at Springfield, Ohio. I think it's I'll get the name in a second. I want to make sure I have it correct. But basically he said that, during spring break, he went back to Springfield and he was catching balls. Maurice Douglas, former Wildcat, who's the head coach there at Springfield, Ohio. He was out there at 6:30 in the morning catching balls, and there haven't been any drop issues with him. here in the fall. He's going to play a role on this team. So, and, if you saw my story there, Vince Merrill kept bringing up Wan'Dale Robinson. I don't know if that's fair or not, but that's what Vince does. So we'll see. And then the last one, Demi Sumo Karanjabe, I mentioned him a minute ago, but the transfer from NC State, he's a running back on the depth chart on the roster, not depth chart yet, on the roster, was a running back at NC State, but they are using him as a running back and a lot in that slot. And he made some plays down the field. There was one wheel route that he made a great play on. The chemistry he already has with Devin Leary obviously was a plus of bringing him in and was evident at practice. So he's a guy they're really high on. Both Mark Stoops and Liam Cohen kind of gushed over him a little bit, both on media day and Saturday at fan day. So those are my quick takeaways on the offense. We can get into the defense later, but a lot to like on the offensive side of the ball.
They talked about using him and Cummings and tight ends to kind of compensate for being a little short at wide receiver, where you had the guys hit the portal. I mean, you got Berrien and Key and Anthony Brown making noise, but not as much depth, and they can kind of, have guys kind of multitask and, cover up for what you don't have in the form of true wideouts on the roster.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think the other guy too that's going to factor in that room is Shamar Porter, the freshman out of Nashville. That dude, he's got we're talking to Woody Scott Woodward on Tuesday, and he said it too. He already has the frame. He's 6'3", 205. He doesn't look like a freshman. That dude looks legit already. He's not like, Dane is 6'3", but they've been trying to get him to put on some weight, and he did put on a little bit over the offseason. He looks like even more ready than Dane did just from a body perspective than Dane did that this time last year. So, I think he'll factor in, but yeah, they definitely, they got to get more out of DeKel Crowdis and Tavion Robinson. There's still some unknown with both of those guys. And, what you're going to get probably from Berrien, Dane, and feel good about with Anthony and Shamar, but you got to get guys to step up, and you could be versatile with it. Might as well move Isaiah and Demi around and get their hands on the ball in creative ways.
Your mindset, Jalen, going into you got your first scrimmage, which will be a depth chart influencing scrimmage as always. Your mindset, is it the same as if you're a starter for a game, or is it more pressure, less pressure? What's the mindset going into a scrimmage and going into a game?
Yeah, everybody's different, man. I just think from a player perspective, the mindset should be to just go out and execute, at the end of the day. Those guys know where they are. As far as where the coaches see them on a depth chart or the imaginary depth chart, they know where they are. And I think the biggest thing, and the coaches preach this, is go out and execute. A lot of times with scrimmages, they don't really get too fancy with the play calls. They don't really get too fancy with, the scheme. They just want to see guys execute the basics over and over again, right? So who can do that at a higher rate are typically the guys that that you can count on. So I think we know a few names that are locks. These guys are locks to be starters. But I think it's going to be interesting with the tight end thing. It's going to be interesting with that 4th, 5th, and 6th receiver. Who are those guys going to be? I think that's the biggest thing. So you get Vince Morrow talking about Brown as like, comparing Wan'Dale, and that's a lot of praise right there. So he must be a guy that is probably behind the main two. So if they're saying that, so we'll see. I think the mentality really should be for those guys to just go out and play fast and execute. I think anything other than that, man, I think you put yourself in a bad situation. You just want to go out and make the routine plays routinely.
Yeah, I just want Sorry about that. I just want to add on to that. Is Anthony Brown was working with the first team on Saturday because Barryon Brown was not practicing. He had a little bit of a soft tissue thing. We'll probably get a status update on him Saturday, but I did see him with a helmet, which he didn't practice at all during fan day. He was on the sideline. But I did see him with a helmet, and it looked like shoulder pads on when he was walking off the field Tuesday after practice when we were let in. So, but yeah, they're going to use Anthony Brown. You're totally right. He's behind Barryon, behind Dane, behind Tavion. But Scott Woodward also said, he was filling in at the Z for Barryon on Saturday, but Woody told us Tuesday he could play X, Y, slot, F. I mean, it doesn't matter. They're going to he's going to play. He's going to be a factor.
Yeah, that's good. So, I think they got a good problem to have over there right now. They got talented guys. I mean, you got a freshman 6'3", 205 coming in. I mean, that's what more can you ask for? I think, and we talked about this a while back, that this may be the best roster from top to bottom on offense that we've seen. And I don't disagree with that. I think it may be. You got potentially 2 all SEC guys right now at receiver, potentially an all SEC quarterback, potentially an all SEC caliber running back. Not in my lifetime I haven't seen that since I've been watching Kentucky football. So, they got a chance to really do something. I think, the depth is there, the talent is there. Like I said, it's a good problem to have when you're trying to figure out who's your 4th best receiver or your next best tight end. That's a good problem to have.
Yeah. And it all starts with Leary too. And there was some rust in the passing game. I think, just that second day in pads that we saw on Saturday, there was a lot of good, but there was some rust. I know there was a ball behind Brendan Bates. That was probably a play that Leary makes in his sleep during the season. So, we'll see what happens there. But I think Vinny and I had this conversation last week. I wanted to get your take on it, Jalen. I just feel like if everything goes right and you get the Devin Leary, and maybe even better that we saw in 2021 at NC State, obviously talking 35-5 touchdown interception ratio, goes into 2022 as the ACC player of the year. I just feel like with the way he extends plays, is willing to take his check down, which we saw a ton of at practice last Saturday with Ray Davis checking it down when he needed to, something Will Levis, for all the good, that was not a strength. But just the willingness to use his check downs, not put the ball in danger, and have touch on the ball, not, my take on it has been Will Levis, I think, will have the better pro career with his arm strength, with what he's able to do just from a sheer arm talent and body frame, perspective. But with Devin Leary, the accuracy he puts on this ball, the decision making, I just feel like he's a better college quarterback, and it might benefit Kentucky this year and some of these receivers who, there are a lot of balls that, like, I keep going back to week 1 of last year, Isaiah Cummings, a 20-mile-an-hour pass wide open in the end zone, and it's just an absolute fastball. And Isaiah will tell you 10 out of 10 times you should catch that ball, but I that's a tough play for a college kid who's not necessarily NFL ready at that point. I think when DeAndre Hopkins catches passes from Will at some point this year, it'll be fine. But for some of these college kids, I just think Devin Leary might be a better fit for them.
Yeah. I don't – obviously, I haven't been at practice. But from what I'm hearing and from the clips that I see, he just looks he looks poised, man. He's a very mature processor, is what I would say.
Yes.
He's a very mature processor at quarterback. And I would say that even 2 years ago at NC State.
Oh, he was. No doubt.
He was a very mature processor in the pocket. And you don't find that a lot in college. The guys that are able to do that are starting on Sundays right now. He's a very, very mature processor. He's a natural quarterback. It just flows with him. He understands. He feels the game. He has really good feel. He has really good feel when it comes to the degree of ball to throw, the touch, not just the touch, but he can throw with velocity, and it could also be, he has that fine line of touch and velocity at the same time, is what I'm trying to say. And a lot of people don't have that, where you can throw a slant and you zipping it, but at the same time, it's not a brick. It's not a heavy ball.
That's what we saw last year, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's a not many people have that. So I'm not throwing shots at anybody. There's guys who start in the NFL on Sunday who don't have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So he has it. He has a lot of grace in the pocket. He has a lot of grace with his throws, and I think he's a very mature processor, man. Which is at the end of the day, this position is about processing under pressure. So if you're in a good system and you know where your outlets are, you know what's coming, you have a system in place where it's not a lot of guesswork. You're looking at a guy who could potentially rewrite some of the records that were just written. So
all goes right.
And I'm not putting pressure on him. I'm not saying that he will. I'm just saying that he has that opportunity if the offense start to click and roll and they get a rhythm. If they can run the ball well, all you needed to tell me was that the wide zone game is looking good.
It was. Oh
yeah. If that you can do a lot off of that. In a play game, in the screen game. I'm excited to see because I watched Liam Cohen and guess what I do? Take notes. And still, so what can I take that I can apply to my level of coaching where I'm at? So I'm excited to see what happens. And like I said, I think, from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, I like the momentum.
Yeah. Just to put a bow on that, what Liam has said I think twice now in the last 3 days, 4 days, whatever. Every eligible is open when Devin Leary is looking in that is like when he said that, it was like, oh, like, okay. So I just that's why I keep coming back to the decision making, not going to your check down, not forcing things that aren't there, which again, I'm not trying to pick on Will Levis, but I just think those were some of the things that led to some of the struggles for him, why we saw 13 and 10 interceptions, respectively the last 2 years. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that the defense during that practice that we got to see, there were a good amount of times where the defense just covered it up really well downfield. And Ray Davis was wide open, or Juton McClain was wide open for the check down. He hits one of them and it goes for 10 yards. I mean, it happened a bunch, and we haven't seen that. And we saw it in 21 with Chris Rodriguez, Juton at times, Cavassier Smoke at times. I think maybe part of it's Liam Cohen, like enforcing that and making that something, because Will did do it a little bit more in 21, but I just think you're going to see it a lot more. And, no one likes the check down. It's a boring play just from a football fan perspective, right? But hey, it's a smart play. And when you have some guys who can really run, like Demi can, like Juton can, I think Ray can run a little bit better than he's given credit for. If it's blocked downfield, those are going to end up being big plays.
And it's a system thing because you saw a young Jared Goff able to consistently hit a check down.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw that in the NFL, I was like, okay, it's the system. You saw a Will Levis who wasn't that experienced, get to Kentucky and was able to hit the check down more than he did last year.
Yeah. And he didn't do it almost at all last year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And hitting a check down to a defense, hitting a check down and they going 10 yards to a defensive coordinator, that's equivalent to having Lamar Jackson at quarterback. And you cover everything up and he scrambles and gets you 12. And that's annoying for defense. So, it's a weapon to have when you have a running back who can catch a 2-yard route or 3-yard route or behind the line of scrimmage route and turn it into 7+. That's a weapon to have. And to have a quarterback who can process that and become comfortable with taking those things, you're dealing with upper level offense is what you're dealing with. So I like to see it. It's one of the first things I noticed when I started studying the Rams, which was how much that a young Jared Goff was able to consistently hit his checkdowns and turn it into positive plays, man. So, like I said, this offense is like it's so simple but complex. And it's noticeable at how fast the players are playing relative to what they did last year. How much confidence they have in what they're doing relative to what happened last year. And I haven't even been at practice. I just saw a few clips. So I can only imagine going to practice and actually seeing the detail of it. So that's good.
And so that stood out to me too, listening to the press conference. All eligibles, like you said. So for real, Jalen, that means no decoys, like no decoys at all.
What I got from that all eligible that lets me know that first that he can put the ball in spots where only his guys can get it, so he has the accuracy.
Right.
That's one. The next thing is he's able to process and get through his progression. That's two. And the last thing is he can not only can he put the ball in spots, but they have the talent at receiver for those guys to go get it anyway. When it's covered, can you make contested catches? And we all know in this conference, the corners in this conference go play high level All Pro Bowl football. So if you can do that in this conference, then you can do it anywhere. So that like I said, that for him, I haven't been able to watch all the interviews. I've been so busy with camp, but I didn't know that he said that. The fact that he said that, and you said that he said it a couple times,
twice, yeah,
is interesting. That's it's good.
And by the way, no interceptions for actually any of the scholarship quarter. No interceptions in 11-on-11s or 7-on-7s from the quarterbacks. The only one was the walk-on Shane Ham on the last play of practice. So Mark, it was funny because it felt like practice should have been over, and the offense kept making some plays, and Mark Stoops clearly waited for a defensive play to end practice. So you get a walk-on crime with an interception, and that was the one that called it dead. But no interceptions, and I was just looking at my notes from last year's Fan Day practice, and the first team offense had 3 interceptions on 11-on-11. So we'll see. I mean, what does it mean? I don't know, but they didn't turn the ball over.
When you at the park at the playground, you can't lead a court until you make your last shot. So,
right.
You can't end practice until
as
soon as that defense made a play, that was it.
That's how they do, man. Yeah. Defensive coaches.
Yep.
And I think, speaking of this, though, AG, you and I talked about it last week. If jokingly, would Liam Cohen go in and go Sean Payton on Rich Scangarello? Now, he didn't do it, but in the little poll I put out, it was 50-50s. 50-50 for like they'd be cool with it, 50 for maybe he shouldn't do that. But I think it was John Clay that asked Woodward, is there any carryover, anything that you can apply from last year moving to this year? And he was like, no.
Oh wow. Yeah, I talked to Woody, but I guess I wasn't there for that one. Wow.
Y'all all seen Friday when Debo knocked Red out, and then his daddy come and he said, "You want some of this, old man?" No, that's the way Woodward was like. Anything from last year carry over this year, he was like,
"Yeah,
oh."
No, I will say the one thing that was brought up that was an indirect shot, and I don't want to say if it was Stoops. It was definitely either Stoops or Cohen. So I don't want to say who it was because I can't remember off the top of my head. But it was at media day on the podium there, and just talking about the offensive line, and there was a lot of just simplifying things and simplifying not just the assignments to the offensive line and all that, but for everyone. That just things got there was too much verbiage, there was too much thought, that was being put into things, and maybe that was on the coaching. I mean, again, nothing direct, but to me that was hey, okay, they're trying to simplify things for these guys and kind of just let them do what they do best, which is play football, and maybe take some of the thinking out of it. And I think that actually not exact words, but paraphrasing that, taking the thinking out of it was actually brought up by one of those guys there. So I think those are the big things. But to hear, I didn't know what he said that, so that's very interesting. And you can put a lot of it on Rick Scangarello, but you got to also remember that the offensive line they didn't have the bodies they normally do last year. They lost 3 guys to the pros with COVID and stuff. And even I was thinking about this, like, when you lose a guy like John Schlarman, it just like it's hard to like reestablish that culture right away, right? And that's not anything against Eric Wolford. That's not anything against Zach Yenser, but he had such a culture there, such a presence that again, it's nothing against the coaches who have come in after him, but he's a hard guy to top. And it's probably an emotional, going into that 2021 season, it might have been emotional for some of those guys. They were able to make it work. And then 2022, guys like Luke Fortner, who was a leader in that room, leaves, and it's hard, right? Because Schlarman's not there, and then Luke Fortner's not there. So that was just a thought. I'm not making excuses, of course, but I was just having that thought the other day. Like, I think people underestimate, obviously football is the least important thing with, John Schlarman's cancer battle and his passing. His kids are most important, his family, his wife. But the football side of things, I think, there's an impact there that might have gone overlooked in all this. And now, Eli Cox is an established veteran who did get time with Schlarman at this point in his career. Zach Yenser is here for year 2. He's kind of identifying a culture. Liam Cohen is back. So, maybe things will start to take a turn. And obviously you had, real experience in the portal this time. So I just think that was something that was overlooked with the offensive line last year.
And on that note with the offensive line, first of all, people that was tweeting out pictures of Coach Schlarman's kid in the Little League World Series.
Yeah, that was real cool.
That was cool. And the big dog, too, was asked about it. Like you said, maybe it all can't be put on Skang, but in a way, I think they indirectly still kind of did, because he was saying that, even with all the talent they had at O-line in Cohen's first year, Kennard and all the guys went to the NFL.
Yeah.
They still did a lot of 6- and 7-man protections. And then you lose all that talent. And last year they did 5-man protections.
Yeah, it was all 5-man protection.
Freshmen. And so that, in a way, that was still kind of redirecting it back to the scheme and the coordinator. And so
look, the wide receiver screens were a joke. And there was a lot of things where I think Skang gets a lot of the blame. And I mean, look, Will Levis, I don't blame him for getting hurt, but his injury is part to blame, and him just not having the year everyone expected him to have, for injury or not, is to blame. And that's not a shot at him. It's just the fact that if he was the 2021 Will Levis, they would have won an extra game or 2 last year. That's just the facts. And Chris Rodriguez not being there for 2 weeks or 4 weeks. I mean, there was a lot that went wrong for the offense last year. And I'm not going to go to percentages, but I'd put the majority on Scangarello, but it goes on a lot of guys. I know Mark Stoops will say it's on him. I don't even know if I'd go that far there, but there was a lot not to like. But hey, I mean, if it's only practice, but if we're seeing what I saw on Saturday, which is only going to get better, I would assume, because you got 3 more weeks of fall camp. Oh man, it should be a massive turnaround. It should be a lot more like 2021, and maybe even I think you're going to get the turnovers down, because that was the one issue. I think they finished 2021 with a negative turnover differential. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I mean, it's on the defense to get some more turnovers. That's kind of been the one thing they've been missing the last couple of years, but I don't think you're seeing that with Devin Leary at quarterback.
And I guess the Liam Cohen effect, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, Jalen, before he committed. But Stone Saunders commits. There's been a lot going on, but this, class 2025, that's a big get. We already got Boley. You get Levis. You get Leary, Boley, Saunders. And look, he still got 2 more years. Already, 100 touchdown passes, been to the state championship game already and all that. From Pennsylvania. And look, they just make quarterbacks up there. We're talking Johnny Unitas, Dan Marino, Joe Namath, Joe Montana. I'm not saying he's going to be that. I'm just saying Kentucky went to Pennsylvania and got a quarterback, and the history of quarterbacks coming out of that state. I mean, that's, and he wouldn't have come if Cohen wasn't here. He went somewhere else. So,
No doubt. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, man. If you got Liam Cohen recruit you, I mean, there's not much else that need to be said, to be honest with you. I mean, just look at what comes from that system. Look at how they operate, man. It's just, I like the mix of pro style, but also there's like a healthy mix of like just flat out simplicity. Simple stuff, running tempos or changing the tempos. You know, a lot of seem like a lot of just like easy throws built in. From when I watch them, you got your good mix of shot plays. 6, 7, and sometimes even 8-man protection shot plays. It was just a fun system to play in. Seemed like I enjoy watching it. It's not your typical cookie cutter NFL system, and you guys know what I mean by that, right?
Yeah.
You watch the Raiders with Gruden. You watch the Texans. You just watch some of these teams. Who else? I'm missing some super cookie cutter teams. You watch the Seahawks, and it's
The
just
Raiders
like,
with McDaniels even.
yeah, it's just like, come on, man, like help the quarterback out. There's like a trillion plays on the call sheet with a trillion different adjustments. Like, how can you ever? I don't care if it's your job or not, and maybe I'm just off my rocker, man, but. Last time I checked, there's only 24 hours in a day. And last time I checked, you only got 4 days to prepare for a game. Really, true 4 work days. How do you get good at all of that stuff in 4 days? I've always questioned that. When you watch the Rams, you see the same stuff from week to week. Now, they may adjust formation, motion. They may add a route tweak here, but it's the same schemes, especially in the pass game. Go watch the year. What year was it? The year they won the Super Bowl. And they had a gunslinger, Matt Stafford.
Yeah.
And it's the same concepts week after week after week. NFL teams who do this every single day still couldn't stop those basic concepts. So that told me all I need to know. So that's one thing that I think, you see consistency. You see a foundation that quarterbacks can build on top of, in this system. So, like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if they start really landing some guys on the offense side of the ball, man. Because if they have a good year this year, it's going to be one of those things where you're going to see guys who were supposed to go to Bama, they're supposed to go to quarterbacks that say, hey, man, I may have to look at this because these guys are operating at a high clip.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, man. And I think, and you look at all these, even the 4-star receivers they've gotten the last 3 years, they're all like Shamar Porter committed before Liam Cohen left. Brarion Brown, Dane Key, those are all Cohen commits. So I totally see it. Offensive linemen too, even I think they're going to do better. Just any offensive player is going to want to play in the system that they saw in 2021 if it's able to replicate itself again. But the one thing I'm curious with is I don't want to look ahead to next year, but 2024 quarterback situation, because you're going to have Cutter Boley, Kaya Sharon, guys. He was awesome I've never seen him play the way he did at open practice Saturday. I mean, his best play was probably a 50-yard deep ball into the end zone to Cal Crowdis. Crowdis, beat double coverage. The DBs were still pretty close, and it's just a straight goal ball in the middle of the field, and Shern dropped it in the bread bucket. It just went through Crowdis's hands. It would have been probably the play of practice if Crowdis held on to it. It was a perfect ball though, and then he hit Porter on a deep ball for a touchdown. I mean, he was no turnovers. He was slinging it. So I am curious to see. Obviously Saunders is a 25 guy. I don't think that's going to change what they do this coming off season. If they're going to just let it be between Kaya, Destin Wade, and Cutter Boley and make the best man win, or are they going to do the portal thing one more time to try to find a guy like Leary or Levis? So, but regardless, whether it's portal, whether it's high school kids, there's a reason Devin Leary, the top quarterback transfer, who could have gone anywhere, specifically could have gone to Auburn, could have gone to Florida, could have gone to even Missouri, where Eli Drinkwitz is the one who recruited him out of high school. They have a good relationship. He could have gone there, and he ends up here for a reason.
We talked, SEC media days about Weaver and the weight that he gained. The other day we talked about, they talked to Bates about the weight that he's lost, getting down from 270 to 255, and he's determined to not be labeled as just a blocking tight end. Wants to show he has hands, wants to show that he can move. You already mentioned Cummings, who we had on here last year, is being maybe reestablishing himself. And so that room is deep, and Bates wants to, and not only benefit the team, but also benefit himself to show that he can do more than just block.
That's right. And then you still, Jordan Dingle hasn't practiced yet. He's still coming back from that offseason surgery. So it was funny. Vince Mara was reminded of that on Tuesday. He's like, oh, yeah, Dingle's coming back. I keep forgetting that. That's good. Just another. And Josh Caddis is nasty, too, as a block. If you're going to label a guy a blocking tight end in that room, it might be Caddis, though he had that 70-yard catch and run last year. So, he can make plays, too.
Cohen called him a dog.
He called him a dog. Yeah. It was funny. There was a play. Man, it was one of the first plays in 11-on-11s working with the first. And he had a red jersey on, by the way, doing all this, Caddis, because he's coming off an offseason surgery too. And with a red jersey, he's in there still, they can't keep him out. He ended up taking it off. But he's out there blocking Trayvon Ripka, and he won the rep. And they jawed, and they were pushing and shoving, and it almost got into a real fight. And I think that was another thing that was good about this. You don't want fights. You don't want guys hurt. But it got chippy a lot, and we didn't see that last year. Stoops was asked about that, and he, specifically said, "I feel like we're getting our physicality back on offense." I think the defense was great last year, but the edge just felt like it was there all of practice on both sides of the ball. Dane Key and Maxwell Harrison talked. I can't say any of the words they were saying to each other throughout the practice. I mean, they were jawing all day long, working against each other with the ones. There were a couple other examples. I mean, even a walk-on linebacker was getting into it after a hit. Like, it was a chippy physical practice, and that was really good to see. We didn't see that last year, and just a lot of good signs. I don't want to go, overhype a fan day practice. I won't call it a fan day. It was fan day, but it was a padded practice. It was their second day in pads. It was a legit practice, but I guess a first week of fall camp practice. I don't want to overhype it. I guess they'll probably have their first scrimmage on Saturday. My guess is. So, unfortunately we won't be able to see that, but that's probably the first taste of really getting to see where you're at. But there was a lot to like on both sides of the ball. I mean, honestly, I think the offense probably won the day, but the defense did a pretty good job in coverage. I thought pretty much all the corners did a good job. My only concern really after that practice on the defense side of the ball is kind of just the same things, just making – and J.J. Weaver looked great. So this is taking J.J. Weaver out of it, just getting pressure on that quarterback, getting to that quarterback. I think they finished in the bottom 25 in the country in sacks last year. So that was the one thing. And then, outside of Trevin Wallace and De'Aaron Jackson, you got to have some guys stepping up at inside linebacker. I mean, Davion Rayner, who – had really good numbers at Northern Illinois, is kind of a guy they're still, when Brad White talked about it, he kind of talked about there still being a lot of developing and a lot of growing physicality wise for him. So and he was working with the third team. So I'm curious to see, how he progresses, and same with Martez Throw and Luke Fulton. They got to get something out of those, at least two of those three guys there. So those are the only things I really came concerned with the defense, but and then the offense, again, there was some rust in the pass game, but overall, man, it looks like a much better football team than we saw last year at this time.
And you talk about stuff getting chippy, and both sides. Well, last year, as you and the media documented, there was nothing to get chippy about. It was
the defense just dominated.
It was such a struggle for the offense to do anything. Like you said, they were getting dominated. What they were
getting laughed at last year.
What they got to get chippy about? I mean,
right.
So this year, like you said, their edge is back, and they can pop off and talk that talk too. So night and day.
It was a very even practice. I would give the offense. I'm probably biased with the offense because I haven't seen good offense from Kentucky like that in a couple of years. Yeah, man, it was very, very encouraging. I don't know how anyone could walk away from that practice and not be pretty encouraged by what they saw.
Stoops gonna ban you from the next press conference. You biased towards offense. Your credential will get revoked now. He's
been in a good mood too. He's upbeat. You can tell he And again, he's doing exactly what I thought he would. He's being very careful about hyping up this team, but he's also there are times where it peeks through, like when he's talking about Deme Sumo Karanjabi, like, yeah, he got really excited about that kid. Like there are times, and Devin Leary he's always excited to talk about. So, at times you could see that excitement peek through. So I think they're a dangerous team. I truly believe that, not just because I'm covering them. I just, from what I'm seeing, compared to last year, it it looks the part to me.
And looking the part, we talk about and see Big Game Boomer put lists out all the time, and AG, you just flat out tweeted that you don't agree with a lot of his list.
True, yeah.
Like fan base, restaurant, best college town, all kind of different lists.
Stadium
real polarizing,
nicknames.
real polarizing. So he knows he's going to get a big reaction one way or the other. Well, he put out his best college football podcast for each school, and for the second year in a row, Bleav in Kentucky is his best college football podcast. So, hey, we appreciate the love. We appreciate him recognizing us, back to back on that front. So we had to at least acknowledge that he acknowledged us on this episode of the podcast.
No doubt. Yeah, I stand by what I said about not agreeing most of the time. But this time I do, and I appreciate it very much. So that was cool. I think that it got us some followers right away. I saw the numbers up again this week. So that meant a lot. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Appreciate that for sure. One, down note too, it's hate to see that Nick Hall was injured, and they haven't really said why. Season ending and possibly more. His dad is a good dude, Antonio, who was a lineman for Kentucky, back when Lorenzo was here. And so hated to hear that about Nick. Not sure how much he would have played, but it was some depth that you lose now on that offensive line.
Yeah, I hated to hear that too. And it's a great question on how much he would play, because another interesting note just from like how the depth chart is shaking out is that Dylan Ray, who's the transfer from West Virginia, he's actually a preferred walk-on unless that status has already been upgraded, which could be, but he was the second team left tackle. So that makes me question, okay, was Nick Hall like a guy they thought about at left tackle there as the number 2 behind Cox? So, and Dylan Ray looked good. So I mean, I don't know, but yeah, that was unfortunate to hear. You never want to hear that. And they were able to get Austin Ramsey, the 3-star prospect out of Philly. He was not initially on the roster, but I saw him at Fan Day, and today was confirmed that he is on campus and a part of the team. So that's just another body in that room to kind of help stabilize things. But Paul's a guy that, you mentioned he's a legacy player, the guy they were able to get out of Texas. And there were some aspirations for him to be on the field this year, I think. And I don't know, not in a starting role, but in some capacity. So hate that for him. Hopefully he'll be okay and we can get him back out there next year.
Yeah, for sure. And the Pac-12, as we know it, is about to be gone.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Y'all, man, y'all's thoughts on all of that. It's been getting crazier little by little, but now that, when Arizona and all those, Utah went to the Big 12, Washington, Oregon leave, and now you got to pack, what was it, 4 teams left out there after this year?
You're going to have a pack of 4.
Pack 4, yeah.
They're in a pack of 4.
What do you got? I would just merge with the Mountain West and try to make do of it, because there's some good teams in that Mountain West. It's not the same, but I'm hearing I had a buddy saying, they should scrap together this list of teams. I'm like, no, that just doesn't look. I would just do it. I hate it for the 4 teams who are kind of left out of it, but I hate it as a whole. I mean, the Pac-12, I know they haven't had much success football-wise from a playoff standpoint, but Pac-12 after dark, their tradition, the basketball tradition, really, even more so to an extent, it sucks. And college sports is going to look a hell of a lot different starting next year.
Mm-hmm.
And the travel, holy crap, do I feel bad. Not for the small sport athletes, to tennis and soccer and those kids who are going to be expected in class on a Friday after they play, after Washington plays a soccer match at Piscataway against Rutgers, and then they have to be in class the next day, man. Like that's, and
I was thinking,
no,
go ahead.
no, just like, I don't know if y'all heard the rant that Eli Drinkwitz had, and I know, he's a little bit of a goofy guy, but it was spot on in my opinion, like about the travel and how, why didn't we get any of the players' perspective, student athlete perspective, like, and I get, like, I agreed with that, man. Like that just seems, I think the football kids where, they go on Friday and they'll be out of there after the game, they'll be okay. Even basketball to an extent, it's a quick trip, they'll be all right. But baseball, so the schools that have to fly, the sports have to fly commercial, like it's brutal, man. It's brutal. Yeah,
man. You get men's soccer going to play Rutgers from UCLA or USC, man. That's gonna be brutal, man.
And the rivalries, like we're gonna lose a lot of good ones, and a lot of like the Apple Cup is just one example. The Civil War, Oregon State, just some good games throughout the years and fun rivalries and schools just with really good fan bases that don't like each other. Like, I just think there was some overthinking. Like, even I saw like, oh, we'll get a Washington-Indiana rivalry eventually, but it's like Michael Penix is only there 1 year. Is Kalen DeBoer really enough to have a rivalry between Washington and Indiana? Like, I don't know, man. It's gonna be.
It's amazing.
It's going to be bizarre.
It's amazing. It's amazing what potential earnings can make you do, man.
TV.
Yeah. And the way they're trying to sell it, the things I've heard, the Big Ten is like, now we've got football in all the time zones. I mean, and
you already did.
That they don't, that isn't.
Well,
that
not
isn't,
the conference. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And to me, that's not a big selling point. And I don't think the SEC is not going to make a reactionary move just to trump what they did. I don't think they really need to. And then you got Matt Rule in Nebraska, him trying to sell it. He said Nebraska can kind of be the central location for the East Coast teams in the Big Ten and the West Coast teams in the Big Ten.
I like the creativity.
Come to Nebraska. I'm like, man, what is that? Makes no sense either. So the way they're trying to spin this stuff for the Big Ten is just wow.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I think as a college football, like, people are fans of a team, usually, maybe two in some cases, even though I never agree with that. I don't think like there might be a conference that like, I like watching the SEC because I think it's close to the NFL. It's the closest thing to a pro game, whatever. But I don't think they're fans of conferences. I think it's more so fans of the sport. And most college football fans are pretty jacked up when, the day's winding down, you're in bed, you're eating ice cream on the couch, whatever, and you got UCLA, Washington State on the TV because there's a game on. Like, I don't think they really care who it is. I think it's unless you're a fan of that team, it's football. So to say, like, for these conferences to be like, oh, now we have games in every time zone, like, that's just, we're making more money at different times of the day. That's not, we're helping our fans out. Like, I just don't think, I've never heard anyone say, I'm a Big Ten fan, or I'm an SEC fan. It's no, I'm a Kentucky fan or whatever. Like, it's just, that argument to me is so stupid. He might as well just say, we're going to make more money off of it. It's great.
I think the SEC
just be honest, I respect it.
I think the SEC does kind of, puff his chest out more because,
sure.
like I will say I'm an SEC guy. I do like the SEC over the other conferences, and it just means more. Maybe corny, but it does mean more in this conference. This conference ain't breaking down to 4 teams. You look at everybody else is struggling and doing this and that, but Sankey ain't got reason to worry about nothing because he knows he's good. Right. I heard a guy that covers, I think it was Arizona State. He covered the Pac-12. I forget what show I was listening to, but he basically said, look, when Arizona State is 2-7, the stands are going to be empty. He said if Auburn is 3-7, there's still going to be quite a few people in there.
See that game
he
for
said
Williams last year?
That's just the difference in the conference. Mississippi State struggling, you're still gonna have a lot more people in that
Yeah.
building in that stadium than you will watching Stanford be wanting to. And he wasn't lying, man.
And it's not going to make a difference when it's West Virginia in town instead of Wazoo. Like, it's just, I just don't get it. Like, I get the money factor. If teams just straight out came and said, yeah, you know, we were going to get screwed financially, I'd respect it more. But to spin it in any other way is just, it's BS. Like, I actually, what Matt Rule is saying is not that stupid in retrospect compared to the time zone thing. It's goofy. I agree with that. But like, hey, he's kind of got a point a little bit. And you know what? A lot of Nebraska, when they had Tom Osborne, got a lot of Cali kids for kind of that reason because it was in the middle of the country. But nah, like to say, oh yeah, we're gonna have time zones and what? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
I used to enjoy watching. You know, even back like almost near like the Reggie Bush days, man. Watching USC and Fresno State play super late. You know, I used to enjoy that. But now, you know, a lot of these schools, man, they're, you know, like they were saying, what it is it's not semi-pro. It's like a feeder league to the NFL is what it is. Power 5 college football. And a lot of it is football programs are so prestigious that they can disconnect from the school.
Right.
So, like, I mean, the University of Alabama doesn't need the University of Alabama. The University of Alabama football team is its own entity. You know, that's just what it is now. So, you know, it's just we're going to more of a pro system. Is what it is. And I like what Chip Kelly kind of had to say. He was like more of, you know, take some of these big Power 5 schools and put them in like a super conference or whatever you want to call it, and then have your group of 5 schools and have them in a super conference and they play for a championship. You know, because at the end of the day, we all know that aside from like UCF now and maybe Cincinnati, most of these group of 5 schools, they'll never beat Georgia, ever. So, you know, so just make them separate, let them play for a championship, and, you know, and do it that way. But a lot of these schools are selling out their prestigious name for $1, you know, because at the end of the day, Oklahoma's name will not mean as much 10 years from now as it did the previous 10, 20, 40 years. Oklahoma, sooner or later.
Sooner. Get it?
Yeah. I like that. Probably sooner rather than later. If you were to have a child today, when about time they're 17 years old, they will ask, why is Oklahoma talked about so much? Because they're not going to go into the SEC and compete at a high level. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Even with the 12-team playoff, I still don't see it happening. Texas can do it. Texas has a bigger brand.
Yes,
Texas is situated in an area where football is equivalent to church on Sundays, literally. You know, it's or bigger. You know, if we want to be honest. You know, so it's in an area where they can survive. Oklahoma, not many kids are gonna now. You know, they say going to the SEC they'll be able to get more recruits. I beg to differ, man. I beg to differ. I think with Texas in the SEC, and you still got Texas A&M, Ole Miss, LSU, Bama, Auburn, Georgia. I mean, you still got all these teams. How are you going to survive in a conference like that? I mean, what? Okay, out of the 10 games you play, you're gonna have years where you catch bad luck, and 5 games in a row you're going to play a top 12 team, potentially. You know, top 15 team, 5 games in a row. Good luck. You know, I just don't, you know, like I said, they sold their prestigious name out for potential earnings is what they did, you know, and it's not going to pay off like a lot of these people think it's going to pay off.
Yeah. It's going to be just fascinating to see what happens, man. And OU, I don't know. They're a harder one. Like, I agree. Like Texas is all coaching, right? Like, I don't know if Sark's the guy yet. They haven't had, like, since Mac Brown, they have not found the right answer at coach. Like, that is why I think they have not become Texas again. I think as soon as they if you put Nick Saban at Texas, he would have done what he did at Alabama. too.
Oh yeah. No
Put Kirby Smart there, whatever. But even I think Lane Kiffin would have done a better job than Sark is. So as soon as they get the right coach in there, whether it ends up being Sark or somebody else, I think they'll thrive. But yeah, man, OU, it's definitely, I think they could have more success than as if. I don't know. I think they'd have more success if Florida State came in my opinion, just with the brand and the proximity to Texas. But I think they may end up in the Ole Miss, Mississippi State, maybe a little step ahead, maybe closer to maybe knocking on the door of the Florida, Tennessee camps. But I just don't see them touching Georgia and Alabama ever. Like Jalen said, I don't see it. I think they're just going to be another. And I don't know if Venables is the right coach there either. By the way, that's another thing too.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's just a bad time for those two schools to transition. I think OU, Oregon going to the Big Ten, they're in great shape. USC, if they could, if Lincoln Riley decides to coach defense or get a coordinator on defense that actually knows defense, they'll be fine. Washington will be fine. But some of the schools that are moving, they're going to get smoked. Even some Arizona and Arizona State are going to get smoked in the new look Big 12, dude. It's truth. Oklahoma State and Baylor will tear those teams apart. No doubt in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Good stuff, fellas. I think we hit everything. I think we, got the fall camp vibe, got the commitment,
yeah,
the big game boomer recognition. All this is live, like we talked about, and it'll be up on Bleav.com, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, you can listen. Wherever you want to watch, you can watch. And feel free to subscribe to the YouTube or put your comments in there and follow all those new followers. Welcome. Hope y'all enjoy what you're listening to. Our former UK long snapper Blake Best followed the podcast. I had to try to get him on here, get the long snapper perspective. If you
they added a scholarship long snapper this year, guys. They're taking it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Ronald Gaines from Temple.
Here we go. Get Boware coaching that all up. So they ain't playing.
No.
But don't forget, we got merch too. We got Cat Daddy shirts. Jalen named them. We got blue, white, and gray. Go to shop.bleav.com. Get yourself a shirt to start the season off with. Know somebody that would like a shirt, get yourself one. Get them one, however you want to do it. Appreciate everybody that takes the time to watch and listen. Appreciate y'all hopping on here, fellas, to drop knowledge each and every week. And look, we'll be back here next week. There's more and more stuff to talk about. We're getting closer and closer. Depth chart stuff.
Yeah.
All that stuff is about to happen. AG, man, we got to talk about maybe next week. The Orioles announcer, man, Kevin Brown, they did him so dirty, man.
Dude. If I were him, I'd be suing. I'd be out of we'll get into that. There should be more because he's supposed to be back on Friday, so we should learn more so we can talk about it a little more.
Yeah, we're talking about that next week.
That was trash. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no sense in the way they did him. But we'll get that next week, whatever else happens between now and then. But hey, y'all fellas be safe. Have a good week. Everybody listening, take care. We'll see y'all next time on Bleav in Kentucky.